Welcome to Consciously Inspired Minds, where we ditch the default and live life by design. I'm your host, Brandy White, personal growth enthusiast, entrepreneur, and lifestyle coach. I host conversations with creators, entrepreneurs, healers, and educators committed to living a life of truth, intention, and connection. Understanding how to discover their inner vision to design their outer world. Our guests take us on a journey of what it means to embody a life of conscious inspiration, joy, impact, and service. Get ready to be inspired. Hello, hello. Happy 2024. Welcome to Consciously Inspired Minds. I've got a really fun guest on today, Dori Fern. Dori is a content marketing leader and certified coach who partners with brands and individuals to change their narratives for transformative results. Dori, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, Brandy. So good to see you. Great to be here.
So good to see you also. Yes, this is going to be an exciting interview today. So I just wanted to give everyone a little bit more color on Dori's background. And Dori and I actually got to know one another through our coaching experience at IPEC. And I wanted to have her on today because she just has so much insight into life transitions, and she's a beautiful storyteller. She's very creative and intuitive, and all of these things I think our listeners will want to hear more about. For over 25 years, Dori has worked with Fortune 100 companies, tech startups, publishing giants, and in her own Brooklyn community. She has held editorial and marketing leadership roles at AOL and Newstar and worked with diverse brands, including Kraft Foods and Martha Stewart Living. Dori is a culinary school graduate with expertise in all things food related. She currently works as a content strategy lead consultant for a pharma brand, Novartis, and as a transitions coach for media and marketing managers at Professional Crossroads. In 2021, to chronicle a year of personal and professional transition, she launched a limited series podcast called Life Changing with Dori Fern. Beautiful, Dori. Again, I am so grateful that you're here today. So let's get into it.
Thank you, Brandy. Me too.
Yeah, of course. So I like to kick off and let our listeners know more about who Dori Fern is. What was your childhood like and your upbringing, and how did that impact who you are and where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like most people, my upbringing definitely did influence who I am and where I am today. I am a New York City native, born and raised, and have lived in this city all but 5 years of my life around college. I was raised in the Bronx, and I have lived in Brooklyn now for 26 years. And I am of this city. I am one of two children to middle-class Jews who, on my mom's side, third generation, not working class, but like healthcare, nurses, administrative secretaries. My grandfather worked in the garment district making pins and buttons, but was an artist, probably deeper down, did carving when he retired and such. I have a younger brother. I'm definitely the bohemian, kind of smart kid in my family. I went to a performing arts high school, the Fame School, and studied drama for 4 years, and storytelling contests, dance, song. So creativity, it was a big part of my upbringing. And I would say that the thing that really influences, I don't know if it's most, but a very big factor is when you grow up in New York City, individuality, especially those of us who like love it and stay and are kind of creative by nature, this idea of how you express yourself as an individual is it's so important in so many areas. Sometimes in a way that I really like, and sometimes in a way that I think maybe doesn't always help me, creates barriers to things that aren't necessary, just that need to kind of distinguish yourself from the millions around you. I love to dance. Like, I'm 57 and I still go out dancing at house music parties. I like the earlier ones now, not so much big clubs, but I'll take a good party where I can get it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious to know, being brought up in New York and this interest in expressing your individuality, was that a place that allowed you to thrive in that because there were so many folks and it's very diverse? Or did it put more pressure on you because you wanted to stand out so badly or really express yourself in a unique way? Do you think living in New York supported that? Or did it put more pressure?
I mean, it does both those things. And I certainly was not a big, for everything I'm saying, one should not think that I was at all a younger person who was the life of all parties and always on the stage and always acting, because I was not at all. I was easily intimidated by people who I thought were better. So a lot of self-doubt.
And where did that come from, that self-doubt?
Oh, certainly my dad. Very critical person and probably mentally ill. Like some sort of therapist I once had said, yeah, he's definitely got some sort of personality disorder. And he's still alive and he still has that. I get along better with him now than I did for most of the rest of my life, which is nice. My daughter doesn't really understand how I can go see him in the nursing home where he's at. My dad's still as cogent as he's ever been, but his body doesn't work quite as well, can't really live alone. And, she doesn't understand how, given how truly abusive he was to me in so many ways, verbally and emotionally, that she doesn't get it. And my daughter's actually got some of his black and white thinking as well, which is that's a whole another story. But as I'm sure I don't need to tell you, you can go forward the best way you can and understand that his stuff is his stuff. And I don't have to take that on. I'm just doing what I think is the right thing for me to do, which is to show up for my dad and just to be there.
Right. And I think forgiveness plays a big part of that, which can take time.
I don't think of it as forgiveness, really. I think of it as acceptance rather than forgiveness, because I'm not going to forgive him for any of the stuff that he did. It's not, but I also don't hold that. Like, I've accepted that that's who he is. And really, we talked about this a lot. And this really stood out to me in IPEC when we talk about energy and how you just don't have to assume other people's energy. So if I want my energy to be a certain way, I think one of the challenges as we grow up is that there are so many interdependencies between other people's feelings and our own, or they become conflated and interconnected. And just like with all relationships, other people's actions are theirs. They have to live with their choices. I have to live with mine. And I found a lot of peace in focusing on what I can control and not obsessing over what other people are doing, because it doesn't really have anything directly to do with me.
And then really that's empowering, isn't it? Being able to sort of take that power back.
Absolutely.
And know that you have control over how you allow others to make you feel or not feel.
It's empowering in a way that is very easy. Empowering is a kind of aggressive word in a sense, right? So the thing that I've discovered about it, I really hadn't thought about this before, but the thing that I would say about it is that when you do that, you really lighten your load. It's empowering in the sense that it sort of clears the decks for you. But in clearing the decks, there's so much ease in that.
Yeah. Yeah. When you say it clears the deck, for me, it's like creating that space. So I'd really love for you to take our listeners through when you were 25, getting married, and then becoming a mother at 30. Like, let's go back there, because I really want to build the essence to what brought you to where you are today and the transition that you're soon to be making, which is really exciting. And I want to make sure that we take our listeners through this narrative that was going on in your mind and in your experiences, because I know so many of our listeners will relate to that.
Sure. Yeah. So I was married at 25, which in New York City, that's very, very young. I don't know that it's so young everywhere. I met my now ex-husband in college. He was a reporter, a journalist at the local newspaper in the town where I went to school. And really the last thing I ever thought was that I was going to meet the person I would marry as a senior in college. I really just didn't expect that for my life. I thought, I just thought I would continue to be different. I would buck the trends of marrying on the younger side. And I knew I wanted to have kids, but none of that was to be expected. And then my ex-husband, who is still family to me, he is, as he was, the family that I think, I guess in a way, romanticized, but felt comfortable with certain aspects of his upbringing, which is very similar to mine. He grew up in the south side of Chicago, so also urban upbringing, very middle class Jewish background. But his family was kind of like more intellectual than mine, and I related to that. So that was, very attractive to me. I had never had a serious boyfriend. I had had some dalliances younger, but he was my first boyfriend. So I didn't know what I didn't know in terms of the things that ended up down the line not working out in our marriage. But I found myself in this situation where I'm getting married. This is before weddings were like so big as they became. We got married at my mom's, outside my mom's house. I did not want like a big fancy wedding. It ended up being maybe even bigger than I expected. But it was, it just feels like such a different time. I was doing this very conventional thing in what I thought was my own less conventional way. And it took me a while, those 5 years, to want to have kids was really all about what am I going to do for my career? So starting from as soon as I graduated college, I was a psych minor. Started as a psych major, became a religious studies major because I thought I could learn more about people and human behavior by learning about comparative religions, focused on Hinduism, spent my junior year abroad in Israel. So I didn't know what I was going to do after. And writing was something, something creative, but also that practical mind that coming from a family where it's like, yeah, you can do anything you want as long as you have medical benefits and a 401k. Like, otherwise it's dumb, So it's very free to be you and me, except if you didn't do that, I didn't really have a roadmap for doing other things because I didn't really know anybody who, at least not in my family experience, that had done. So I worked a little bit in film. I thought I wanted to work in film. And my ex-husband's never been a pushy guy, but he's 4 years older than me. And he was really ready to have kids. And as I'm approaching 30, it's like, all right, I need to do this. But I still hadn't felt like I had a career path. It didn't seem that way to me. It was, and how am I going to do this film stuff when I have a kid? It just all seemed very impossible to me. But nonetheless, I decided just to do it. And I guess I was working in kind of film media entertainment at that time. So I had my daughter. I also, maybe a little surprisingly, and probably not the best idea, is I decided I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I didn't want other people raising my kids. That's how I thought about it. And probably wasn't a wise choice. There was a real disparity between what I had in my head as what I wanted and what really was right for me.
And I was going to ask you that because as we're moving through this, and I know we were chatting before we started recording today, you very much have this creative, intuitive sense about you that shines through brightly, but then also this generous practicality, this cerebral way of moving through life. So tell us a little bit about what you were feeling during that time. And does anything really stand out to you that didn't feel in alignment or that were some sort of sirens going off? When I think about my youth and even the time I was getting married, it's like, okay, well, to your point, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I was just kind of going through the motions. Nothing had really felt really unaligned to me until a little bit later, until after kids, that sort of thing.
I would say also you can't underestimate the generational shifts going on at that period of time. This was 1996 when my daughter was born. The internet was just getting started. My job that I had before I had kids was in an internet-based company that was actually pre-World Wide Web. So by the time the web launched, they were already outdated. But I did get that digital experience. What I didn't get was a job that paid anything I could even consider going back to. It was so low paid that it just didn't make sense to hire childcare to go back to that job. So even though I did have this strong sense that I wanted to raise my kids, I didn't want to have other people, there was also this sense that, well, I didn't really have a better choice. And that feeling of I've missed something. Also, internet startups people were starting to make like lots of money in the bust and boom of the early internet age. Just this feeling of chasing something or not being where I should be at any given time is a feeling that really did persist through. It was always very vague, very hard on myself. Like, I am not making some right decisions. There's some magic answer here that I haven't found the key to unlock.
Is it like there was this yearning inside of you or this inner knowing that you were meant for something maybe more different, greater, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it?
Yeah, that was the feeling. In retrospect, I think even thinking of things as being greater or bigger is its own judgment that now kind of clearing the decks of my life and starting over in some ways is that would anything that I had done have made me feel less that way? I don't know. Or was that just simply some aspect of my own lack of personal validation that I was able to connect with that led to a persistent feeling of not enough? And so what that led to was, I grew up in a home with a lot of yelling, and my dad yelled all the time. When my mom was married to my dad, they divorced when I was 16. And I remember very clearly, my mom really didn't yell after that, but she did. Like, that was what I grew up with, was a lot of yelling. So that's just how I knew how to express myself. Didn't have really any connection to sadness. I still struggle with that more than anything. Really feeling sadness, extreme feelings come out as anger. And so, my kids, and I would say my daughter, I have 2 children. My daughter's 27, my son is 23. And she probably got the worst end of it, but both of them, they were in a home with a mom who wasn't satisfied with her life. Increasingly my marriage I knew wasn't right, and I was searching there. And so always just this sense of things not being right. And my ex-husband, I would say I had really never had boyfriends. I had never had kind of the different experiences of different kinds of men. And for some people, that's fine. And you meet your person and that's it. And maybe in other areas of my life, had I done more different things before I got married, I might have not felt so always, like I was looking for something, always unsettled. I just wanted other experiences. I wanted to know what it was like to be with other people. And, I was pretty, like, after a time, I don't know if I was always completely aware of what it was, but that became a conversation in my marriage. And you can't go back. So I don't, who knows? But that's kind of what that sense of dissatisfaction and searching just was the biggest. And always feeling like, this is a very persistent theme in therapy, always feeling like if there was a group, I was going to be outside of it, whatever the group was, whether it was my family, whether it was friends, whether it was whatever social circle I was in or professional circle I was in, a corporate environment, I was going to be the different one. And it's like I was saying about being a New Yorker, just always having to be.
Was that something that you desired, or was that something that you thought was a belief of your default, like I don't belong anywhere?
That's just a default.
Where did that belief come from?
I just think being different from people in my family.
What made you so different?
It's a good question. I think the combination of being a very brainy kid, which certainly in my immediate family, my dad's definitely smart in ways. He's not an intellectual. I wouldn't call him that, but he got his master's in computer science in the 70s, then never did anything with it because it was too political. And really for him, what I recognized even at the young age of around 10 when this was happening, I remember thinking to myself, he just doesn't want anyone to tell him he messed up or he wasn't good enough. I know it. I could see it at that point. So anyway, I remember my pediatrician told my parents that they should put me in a private school, not a public school, because I was a smart kid. I also, again, danced from a very young age. I wrote stories from a young age, but I didn't really see that. It wasn't like there was nobody around me who was like that, but it wasn't the most common thing, and it wasn't something that felt in the peer group and in my immediate surroundings was super normalized.
Was it also one of those things, I know this is common for folks and can be even more so for women, is we don't want to outshine others because then we're cast out and we're no longer part of that tribe. Was it a lot of that for you?
I don't think it was because I was a girl or a woman. I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. That doesn't really resonate with me, but I don't know that it's not true. I've always been someone, like when I went to performing arts and I was a drama student, I realized right away that I didn't want to be an actor because I didn't really like being other characters. I liked being myself, but I liked storytelling. I liked being in front of people telling stories. I've struggled over the years to feel comfortable doing it. And also sometimes, certainly at work, I can talk around in circles, not get to the point. I've probably done it here already. My brain goes in all different directions. So even though I love telling stories and conveying something to people, I don't always land the plane quickly and directly. So I think my hesitation is because that is a struggle for me.
What's a struggle for you?
Getting to the point. My son thinks I might have ADD, which he has, that I might have some little bit of ADD or ADHD. It's possible.
And it's one of those things too that the sense of belonging is so loud in all of our minds even when we think about wanting to find groups where there's like-minded people and where we can really celebrate ourselves in a comfortable, safe place and be recognized and heard and seen and all of those things, which is a lot about living a consciously inspired life and showing up fully expressive. And so a lot of that can come back to the fears and multi-generational trauma or programming or cultural programming, societal programming. So just trying to get to the root of what makes us feel as though we don't belong or that we will never belong. And how do we tap more into that gift for the good and allowing that to work for us instead of against us? Because I think that is what can inhibit us from living a consciously inspired life is the fear of being fully expressed or just not being sure how to do it or where to do it or how to say it, where to say it.
That's it for me. I feel comfortable with the first part about expressing all the things. We've talked about this before, that I am very not only comfortable with, but kind of committed to openness and messiness and imperfection and being able to express it because it's something so many people have a hard time with. And that is something I don't have a hard time with.
Yeah, I guess I would be curious to know, when did you start to become aware that you wanted to embrace the messiness? And when you say that, it almost makes me think about an unconventional way of living is okay. Because the older I get and the more I experience, the more I want to tailor that authentically to me. And I want to live a life. I want it to design a life uniquely inspired by me. And how do I embrace that? How do I celebrate that? Because it can be really uncomfortable when you're doing things the unconventional way.
But that's the other thing about being a New Yorker. And that is why that is probably not uncomfortable for me at all. Being unconventional is, again, I don't want to use judgment on it, but it's something I'm comfortable with. So it's how do I create impact for other people or with other people? How do I model that for other people so they can do the same where it makes sense for them to do it or where they want to or where it's holding them back not to?
Sure. Okay, so we're on the heels of the divorce. We're there. And then your desire to want to help other people fully express and create a safe space to help people.
Well, I was divorced way before that. I've been divorced now for 16 years, something like that. It's been a long time. My desire to step into being a positive guide or support for other people in whatever they want to do, connecting that part of me that does like to help people is a big part of when I decided to leave my job and to explore what that would look like for me to make different choices. I don't think that divorce had anything to do with that, really, even though it might seem like it would. But that has been a thread my whole life. When I was younger, this thing comes to mind when I was like 13 years old. I was friends with this girl, Roberta. She was backup singer for Guns N' Roses for a while. She was very popular. She always had boyfriends. I never had boyfriends. And she would come to me for advice. I was just always that person. And she said to me one time, "How do you know so much?" I mean, I don't really know if I knew anything, but I thought I knew something. She thought I knew something when you really haven't had any experience. And I did not have an answer for that. But that's the thing about being a New Yorker, too, that really resonates for me. And I'm sure part of it is just who I am. But being an individual in community that notion is an important one for me. And it's one that has developed more as I've gotten older. So as I've gotten older, it's less just about me and it's less just about that one friend of mine. And it's more connecting on a bigger level with my community. And are there ways that I can bring those connection points out in some sort of public way? And I don't think I've done that yet. So it's still to come. But it does feel like where I would like to go. When my kids left the house is when I really did start thinking, as many people in their early 50s do, if not now, when? When am I going to step into these things that have always been part of me that I felt that I was not doing or moving forward with in some ways? And to the point about my practicality, as I was 50-50 parenting with no alimony or anything like that, I had to support myself. I had to support my kids. My ex and I, money has never been an issue between us. We've always figured it out. But, being self-sufficient was a driver. And even with that, so much judgment on myself for making certain decisions that felt like they were the lowest common denominator decisions, which when I had some time to reflect, I was like, they actually served me pretty well. When they served my family and they served certain choices that I was making pretty well. So let's just put that aside. And I am fortunate to continue having life to live. So let's now move forward into this new phase of my life with a path that seems right.
Yeah. And I think that's where I want to head next, is where we're showing ourselves that compassion and that empathy for the previous version of ourselves that kept us safe, that kept us responsible, fill in the blank, and what we needed to do at that time in that season of our lives, and celebrating that version of ourselves and learning from that version of ourselves. So now we're here, Dori. We come to this place where you've decided the kids are grown, we're taking a sabbatical. So take us through 2021 and what was kind of going through your mind at the time, and what was the impetus of taking that leap?
Yeah, well, you have to kind of go back to 2020. June 4th, 2020 was my birthday. George Floyd had been killed that week. It was actually, we have to go back a little farther, but that was a pivotal time. I got a message on LinkedIn from a woman I had seen on a panel right before COVID. February of 2020, she had been at a panel, Women in Leadership, and I think it was a diversity and inclusion themed. She and I had been talking because she had gone to a program on diversity, equity, and inclusion at Cornell, and I was interested in the program. She was also a coach. So I just thought she was super cool. We had connected. We had a conversation on that program. And as I did about many things during my adult life, I would find someone doing something that really interested me. And there have always been lots of things that interest me. And then I'll go down that rabbit hole of investigating it. And in most cases, did not necessarily move forward that way. And because there was a global pandemic, I had looked into the program, but it was just I couldn't even think about it. Then she sent me a message right in this incredibly awful time of George Floyd's death. And she just wished me a happy birthday, and how had I moved forward with this program? Had I looked into the DEI program? And it was just like a moment. I spent my birthday at a march in Brooklyn after George Floyd's death. And so it was so top of mind that this was just so much had been going on. And I wanted to talk to her again about the program. So that was what got me interested. And so we talked more about the program. And then I said, tell me something about your coaching practice. And she did. And by the end of the call, I had hired her to be my coach. And she was an IPAC coach. So that was 3 months. I didn't think I could afford it. Again, issues with kind of investing in myself, I would say after the fact, because I probably should have continued. But nonetheless, it was very profound understanding energy leadership coaching, as you and I have now grown to understand, and what it means to understand how you show up for things, your mindset, how you react to things around you, the narratives you tell about things. All of that was this huge light bulb for me that other people weren't doing to me. And that was very much part of my narrative about things, especially at work.
You mean being a victim?
Yes, in a way, it was very like certain kinds of definitely men in charge who I felt like did not deserve their positions of power. They were not great. They did not deserve to be in charge. And I resented a lot about their leadership and all sorts of things and whatever. It was more broadly that this particular manager I had at the time, he was a challenging guy for me. We did not get along well. And what I learned through that experience was, like I said with my dad, by looking at him differently, like having empathy for his challenges as a manager, areas in which he was not succeeding at getting what he wanted because he resorted to unsuccessful tactics to get them, I realized that there were maybe ways that I could help him be better. And in return, that would be better for me. And that was hugely empowering, that idea that by focusing on what I could do and not what someone else was doing to me, that was like crazy to me that it took me to be over 50 years old to come to this realization, because now it seems so obvious, but it really was not. That fast forward really empowered me in ways that fast forward to February of 2021, I had a great therapist during the pandemic. She was wonderful, the best I've had. I haven't had that many, but she was truly wonderful. And I don't even know what she said. I don't even remember what we talked about.
So this was your conversations with her that gave you this awareness around what do you have control over? What can you contribute to the relationship?
Honestly, Brandy, it was just right after a session with this therapist. I don't even know what we talked about.
Just something clicked.
That I said, oh, I have to leave my job. It was not as I tend to do or have tended to do. I probably do it a lot less now. Just ruminating and recycling over the same, I should be doing something else. What should I be doing? I need to do that. Just that cycle. It was just this clarity moment. And like I said, I don't even know that we directly talked about that in that session. Whatever we did talk about led me to that conclusion after we got off of our call. And from there, my practicality kicked in and I started to figure out a plan for how I could do this. I don't have an endowment, there isn't endless funds, but I don't even know what I was looking for. But I came across something about the rule of 55. Hot tip for anyone who this pertains to who's listening. When you turn 55, if you quit a job or leave a job for whatever reason, doesn't matter why you leave your job, you can deduct from your 401k without the penalty. You will pay the tax, but you will not pay the penalty. And so that was like, oh, okay. That gave me something to look toward. It was February, my birthday's in June. I was going to save money. There's a pandemic. It was a little easier to do it. And I knew that I had money in this 401k. This 401k from this job was about a year's salary. And I even hired a financial planner just to go over my financial situation, to tell me whether I was being crazy or not crazy, see what she thought. And she's like, if it's going to make you happy, you should do it. So I just laid the foundation for doing it and left my job officially July 4th weekend, right before July 4th, 2021. And it was exhilarating and terrifying. And I did most of the things I had hoped to do. The financial planner told me, really have a financial plan, really budget your money so that it doesn't just kind of hit you in the head when you're running out. I'm not so great at that. I'm really good at kind of knowing how not to get in the hole, but I'm not a great planner. So anyway, it was an amazing year. It started with taking a summer to just be free, just
go to the art museum, go to dance parties.
go to museums, go to the beach when I wanted to, just be free and not have a structure around me, which for somebody who's a very structured person in most ways can be much harder than you think. And what's hard about it is not the doing it, but the not judging it. Because when you judge it, you're wasting your time. When you don't judge it, you are enjoying your time, doing the very same thing. So that was the thing that I had to embody, to learn for myself. Right around September, after that summer, I started to feel like, all right, I got to do something. And I did know that I wanted to do a podcast, and I hadn't yet put the wheels in motion for that. I heard a podcast that a friend / colleague of mine had done. She's a leader, moved from media. She was a journalist to, she worked for the city, nonprofit work. And she just talked about in change, the most important thing that she would say for anybody who's trying to change is to keep moving forward. And she repeated it twice. That will always be a memory of mine because keep moving forward became like a mantra for me. And what, as a word person, as a pseudo-intellectual kind of person, it's such simple words. They're really not that complicated. And what really struck me is how when you hear things, when you experience things, when you're open to things, they just hit different. And that you can dance around or try hard, and then just sometimes something just comes to you at a moment because you're open to receiving it.
Let's be there for a minute, Dori. So trusting those downloads or trusting that intuition, how did you do that through this process? How did you create safety for yourself, continuing to move forward in this desire to move on from your 9-to-5 job, this well-paying role, into finding more ease and pleasure and stillness and having time to reflect and not judging yourself because of it and not judging yourself for not doing anything at certain points of time? Like, you've given yourself this time, it's a gift, and not judging that.
Well, safety is, when you first said it, I thought, well, I don't know that I felt safe doing it. What gave me safety is that practical side. I do highly recommend for anybody thinking of making a big change in their life. Everybody's different, but I would say there is absolutely no shame in planning, in just taking steps to create some sort of a structure around yourself, even if it's not that corporate structure that's familiar, or that whatever that job is, or whatever that familiar thing is. So that's one thing, but then also it's getting comfortable being uncomfortable. That is, I don't know if it's about safety, but it is about getting more comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm not somebody who has done a lot of uncomfortable things. I guess it depends on who you talk to. Some people might look at certain things they've done and see it that way, but I don't feel it. And honestly, if you don't feel it, then you're probably not. Doesn't mean it's not great stuff, by the way. It just...
Yeah. Do you think it was helpful for you to have talked with a therapist, and your experience in working with a coach? Did that give you the support also? And in what ways?
100,000,000%. In terms of the therapy's great. It's really hard to find good therapists. So I don't have any answers or brilliant thoughts on that one, except good luck. And I do think most people benefit from learning how to solve problems for themselves. I'm not one who is like, let's just stay in therapy. Some people like it. It works for them. That's never been my approach to therapy. I usually go in with a problem I'm trying to solve. Of course, what coaching is about is moving forward towards a goal. If coaching is moving forward with a goal, then therapy for me has been solving a problem that needs a little bit more, let's stay there kind of focus in that moment. Then I can figure out what the goal and the plan and all of that moving forward is.
I kind of describe therapy as you would talk through the why, whereas coaching is talking through the how we progress.
Yeah. And there's a little, as we know, there is some of the why that you're going at, but you want to just
Oh, sure. You have to go back to move forward.
It's not quite the depth of that. And for me, what brought me to therapy was addressing my issues with anger. If I wish I had done anything different, is that I had gotten that under control a lot sooner in my life. Not even under control, just simply learned how to let that go. I don't feel like that is an issue for me anymore, which is remarkable to say. It's really easy to say, though, when you live alone, as I do. But I really just don't feel, even when I find myself, as I have a little this week in work, feeling a bit aggravated about things, and that reaction of anger and frustration that tends to be a default feeling for me. I'm able to sort of pause and recognize it and move away from it. So therapy was super helpful. She was a great therapist, and I was ready for it.
You had sort of already primed yourself to receive. You had that desire, whether it was conscious or subconscious.
Yeah. And the coaching was a way to start seeing myself in the world differently, to see the potential for myself differently. I didn't have answers coming out of coaching that I would come to have over that long process of that year that I was very privileged to have and make for myself. But evaluating my mindset and understanding it and really learning that I had more control over that day to day, moment to moment than I thought I did.
Coming from that energetic space, let's talk energetics for a minute, because we've talked a lot about energetics through our training. And one of the things that I know is important to you to highlight is finding joy and appreciation in what already is, instead of striving for what isn't. How do you find that every day? Or how do you at least remind yourself of that?
Well, I don't know if I do it every day, like full disclosure. I think actually what I would say about that is what I learned from that experience is to not necessarily only allow myself to feel joy every day. I do have a greater ability to take a deep breath and move on, but I also have a greater ability to sometimes feel sadness about things, to let myself just feel whatever I'm feeling and not go to whatever my automatic, thoughtless response mechanism is. So it's pausing, it's being in tune with what I'm feeling more often than not. That's a constant that's a constant practice. It really is a daily practice. I do think what I find is some manner of ease. I find joy when I'm not in my head. Most of my life, because we will come to this, but I am back working in marketing now, and I am in my head most of my day. I'm not in my body. But the reason I love dancing so much is because it is the most pure way for me to feel joy. I feel joy in other things. I love to cook, feeding people, being in the mode of cooking something and creating something like that is very joyful for me. Coaching is very joyful because for me with coaching, it is this energy exchange, going back to the energy. It is about energy. It's about a physical kind of exchange of energy. And the other thing we've also talked about is how uncomfortable I get with words like energy because it doesn't seem very grounded in some ways. And I always want to be sure to take notions like energy and bring them to something that is very just, anybody can kind of understand or relate to, which is it's mindset plus feelings. I guess that's does that sound right to you? Mindset plus feelings, like energy is just normal stuff. Like it's how you this is why coaching and talk about being consciously inspired, it goes into this realm, this level of energy that I think most of us don't spend a whole lot of time in. And that kind of energy is one that connects you more with the whole thing. It's not just thinking about things. It's not just doing things, but it is actually the embodiment of all of it with things inside and outside.
It's that mind-body connection too, just bringing awareness into the body and some of those somatic experiences you were just talking about. I can take a breath, I can reground myself, I can sit quietly, whatever that means for you, wherever you can find deep bliss.
Let me just say, because I feel so strongly about this, so that everyone doesn't think I was a horrible, abusive mother, my son will tell you that breathing is just, he will think of his mom whenever he gets anxious, because my first words to him always are, take a deep breath, let's talk about it. So it's, breathing is so key and understated and so effective. A single breath. Listen to this. If you hear nothing more that I say in this hour, whatever we're going to talk, is the power of your breath. It is a life force. It is so helpful when you ask me these questions about finding joy, whatever. Breath is key, like that pause that a breath gives you.
So many of us are so uncomfortable with silence and maybe even just being alone and being with ourselves by ourselves can sound scary, but whatever that means for you. And I think a lot of times people say, I don't meditate. I know for me, when I started on this journey of self-exploration, it was like I had a friend that meditated daily. And I'm like, meditation? What are you talking about? I don't know. I don't have time for meditation. I don't do that. What kind of weird shit are you talking about? But that's why I always try to normalize that word for those maybe even just stepping into how do I get grounded within my own body. It's sit quietly, rest your eyes, hood your eyes, taking a walk in nature, just doing anything calming and relaxing that allows you to be one with yourself and understand, asking yourself, getting curious about where these emotions are coming from. Why am I getting so agitated? What is this frustration really about? And I think that's a great practice.
It is. And one thing you just said that I want to pause on, because it gets to this idea that has become really important for me, which is when you talk about going out in nature or even dancing and being around people, it's being one with yourself. But I think the power, for me anyway, comes in understanding that I am but one of many. It's getting in touch with where I'm at, but with that connection to something beyond. I'm not a religious person, so you can call it whatever you want in terms of spiritual, religious, whatever it is. There is a force, and that force is what is within us and what is outside of us, and how that all kind of works together. And in the best of cases, there is an exchange. And in the worst of cases, there is an exchange too, and sometimes not in the direction that leads to positive outcome.
Right. Well, yeah. And that's where finding that stillness and getting closer to what your deepest desires are. And for me too, it's just simply asking yourself, what is most important to you? What are your values? What are the things that you deeply desire? Just asking yourself those simple questions are things that we tend to dismiss because we're so busy doing all the other things to survive and just to check the box or get through our days. And asking those questions of who am I and what is it that's important to me? That's a very simple, maybe not always easy, but simple way of approaching it. All right, Dori. So let us know what's on the horizon for you next.
Well, yes, I should say, because we sort of, I didn't really talk much about this. As you said, I did do a podcast when I was on sabbatical called Life Changing with Dori Fern. And it was, the thing I'm proud about having done it is that I wanted to share being in the middle of a change. What is it like, that messy middle, that imperfection, and share that with people. So I think it's pretty good. Like, it's not world's greatest podcast, but it's a great expression of one person's journey through that. And where it ends is where I think we are at in this conversation, which is that toward the very, very end of the year, as my financial planner kind of warned, I wound up being like, oh, my money is kind of running out. I need to figure it out. And what am I going to do? And I haven't really figured out what is next. Blah, blah. So after thinking about this for really far too long, I did decide to go to IPEC and become a coach. And around the same time, when I realized I still needed work to earn a living, I got this incredible opportunity to work with a great team of people that I'm working with today at Novartis. It was kind of a content startup within the organization, and really kind people realized like how important it is for me to work with people who are just kind and just a really positive people environment. And went through the program while I've been working at this job. And really, as you tapped on earlier, the biggest thing I've learned in this year and a half now since, wow, it's kind of amazing it's been this long, is that I was able to go back to doing work that I had done before, enjoy the things I enjoy about it, and really just show up differently. It's like, it's kind of amazing how I no longer think of myself as just chasing my life. And it's not like I had to look for a whole nother career to help me be fulfilled or to find my quote purpose. That really the purpose was just simply to be intentional about the life I wanted to lead and whatever I was going to do to just keep that up. And so coaching allowed me to show up for this job. And just the things that I've learned as a coach have helped me to really be a different person in the workplace, to not kind of get sucked under by things I don't like or things that are hard or whatever it is. So where I'm at now is this role is coming to an end soon. And it's kind of great because at the end of 2023, I started having those new year, new you feelings of like, all right, I have kicked off my practice, very soft launch. I've done some transitions coaching. I had a client for about half a year, and that was amazing and wonderful. But I haven't really stepped into that role. I haven't really formalized my business, and I definitely, transitions coaching is super important to me, working with people who have similar work experiences, marketing, media, tech, entertainment, areas that are all very familiar to me, people who are in periods of transition, not necessarily people who are the top of the companies, but people who have been in that world and are like probably at a point in their life where they're looking to change. Though that is very much the client who I want to be working with and helping them to work towards goals. And those goals may be doing something completely different, and it may be just figuring out how they want to be in this experience that they're in right now. Additionally, kind of want to use my nutrition, all of that experience that I have just being a person of my age who is, I really think that whatever habits help people live better. And again, it's that practical and creative. So it's how do you think about your life in a way that is achievable for yourself, where you show up for yourself, where you learn the skills you need to learn to make certain things more attainable. So if cooking is a struggle for you or food is a struggle for you, working on the areas of that part of your life that are a barrier, whether it's your mindset about those things, whether it's your body image, whether it's the skills that you do or don't have, or the knowledge you do or don't have about food. And then just kind of one step at a time, just showing up for the life that you want to be living. And again, same with movement and fitness and all of the rest. So that's an area that is a growth area of mine that I'm also very, very keen to develop for my practice.
Beautiful. And so many things you said kept bringing back this word in my mind, which is choice. Even what it sounds like through your transition, we all want choice, and to be able to move freely through life and have that freedom to explore and discover. And it's about designing a life uniquely inspired by you. There's nothing more empowering than that, knowing that you're taking steps intentionally to create and design this life that is inspired by you and by your values and by your deep desires and by your aspirations. And then being able to model that and spread both the practical tips and the spiritual tips, or whatever has been brought into your journey and the gifts of your journey, sharing that forward. And it sounds like, Dori, you're in such a beautiful place. And I can tell you, everybody, Dori has a website. I know she's still working through that, but dorifern.com. But I have to say, Dori, I got on that website and it was just, as soon as like the homepage was Dori Fern, 100%.
I'm a writer editor, so it definitely needs to be updated, but thank you for saying so. I have recently made some tweaks to it, so it will give you the information that you need if you're interested reaching out to me or learning a bit more about me.
Beautiful. Yeah. It just really pulled forward your essence and your humor and the practical, yet the levity of where you are right now, too, is something I certainly feel. So not only dorifern.com, where else can people find you, Dori?
LinkedIn, for sure. That's probably the best way. I mean, you could follow me on Instagram, but I'm not terribly interesting on Instagram, at least not at this moment in time. That would probably be the best. And my email is on the website. I'm easy to find. Google will tell you it's really quite easy. And also, if you Google me, fun fact, you'll learn that I am a bit of a potato latke champion. So that is a little fun fact that Google will share.
Everything will be in the show notes. And you spoke of that in your podcast as well. And I have to say, just going back to the podcast, Dori, you are one of the most beautiful storytellers I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. Words are your gift, my friend. And I'm excited for folks to explore Life Changing with Dori Fern. It's very relaxing and it's entertaining in everything that you would want in storytelling. So I encourage you to go visit that and check that out. All right, Dori, a closing question for you. What does it mean to you to live a consciously inspired life?
It means admitting you don't know everything, being comfortable with imperfection. It means sharing that imperfection with other people so that they can understand it's okay and very human to be that way. It means dancing. It means not being limited by whatever other people's version of the answer to that question is. I guess that's what it is. It's about finding your own answer to that question. And this podcast will probably give you a sense of what that means for me. And I just said it, but I think what being consciously inspired means is being able to show up for yourself in the world and be kind to other people and think about the world around you and be with the world around you.
Well, thank you, Dori. I appreciate you being here so much. And I look forward to seeing what's around the corner for you and your future endeavors. And I know it will bring all of the joy and the bliss and the support and the love and the empathy and all of the things that you mentioned. I always enjoy sharing space with you. So thank you for being you and thank you for your impact in the world.
Same to you. And I appreciate you too, Brandy. Thanks so much.
All right, everybody. Until next time, bye-bye. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. If you'd like to learn more about Consciously Inspired Minds, you can visit us at consciouslyinspiredminds.com. If these episodes have you wondering how you can design a life uniquely inspired by you, head on over to modelifestylecoaching.com. That's MODE lifestylecoaching.com and schedule a free call. I'd love to learn more about your deepest desires and how we can get you closer to your authentic life vision and impact. Until we connect again, explore what inspires you.